Good evening and welcome to the Chicago Communicator News Media remote broadcast. And I have with me tonight two of my co hosts, Miss Sandra Campbell and Miss Margot Richmond. And this evening, we're just doing a follow up on the presidential election. Last night, as I was at the polls, the area where I was at, we had four polling places in one location. And I'm telling you, the people turned out. The people turned out. And I was just sitting there smiling. I said, whoa. So this is what it took to make y'all come out and have your voices heard. I even had to help a couple of non-English speaking people to the best I could.
Very, very good.
Absolutely. They wanted to know how to make sure that their vote was counted. Ask questions about these judges. And you know what? That's a big thing. A lot of people don't have a clue about who these judges are.
Well,
They don't have a clue.
and that's kind of unfortunate because I didn't really hear a lot about the judges, which you don't normally hear a lot about certain judges. I mean, there are some that are prominent and well known, and they normally would put out some literature. You would see them with some of their literature for the state congresswoman or person. But you're right. I didn't see much of anything.
Right.
I think there was the judge that they accused working closely with State Senator Madigan. I know his stuff was out there, and his opponent was out because they were both talking. And he's over in Will County and DuPage County, I believe, was his area. But I think that a friend of mine had said on Facebook a couple of weeks ago that we really needed to start looking into and talking about the local candidates. And he was right because I think the local ones got overshadowed by the presidential election, which normally is always the case too.
Right.
But in this instance, I think more people became so educated and so informed about presidential elections that they did want to know a little bit more about local candidates, but not a whole lot of information was readily available.
That's true. And it's unfortunate because I saw so many people just mind boggled about who they should vote for. I'm not about the president. They came in there with clear thoughts on what they were going to do with that race, but those other races, it's not good the way we're doing, the way people are learning about who the people that are running, what they stand for. Who are they? I think that we don't do a good job at educating people about the people that are running for these different races. Welcome, Madeline. How are you? Can you hear me? I see you. Okay. Well, at any rate, so what do you all think about the process used today to educate people about the candidate, any candidate? It's not a good process because people don't know who they are. It's not enough. They don't do that often enough and long enough for people to grasp what it is they're offering in terms of their platforms. What do you guys think?
Well, one of the things, like I said, the process isn't broken. It just isn't being utilized. No, they're not doing a whole lot of campaigning.
I wonder why. Don't they want people to know who they are and what they stand for and what they see? I think they don't want to be held accountable.
No, I wouldn't say anything negative like that. It doesn't have to do with them not being held accountable. I mean, those who work with those judges or who go before those judges will remember their names because they don't do anything, but or they don't, the things don't go the way that they want it to go. So not by all means, they remember that judge,
Right, right, right.
But I think it's the responsibility of those judges to campaign. But I think one thing about the judges, and if I recall correctly, if you don't vote for them, they win.
They win?
Yeah, they'll still win. If they don't vote, it's not like one of those things. If you don't get enough votes, or they have opponents. So if you don't vote for the ones, you don't vote for the judges at all. Guess what? That judge is sitting there. Retains their seat.
Right.
So it's probably more incumbent on the incumbent to make sure that they are campaigning.
Okay.
If they're trying to take over somebody else's seat. But if that isn't the case, if we don't vote for them, they still retain their seat.
That's really not good. I don't think that's good.
Well, that's the way the process has been forever. I mean, it's no different than when they're appointed. We don't get to say which judge should be appointed by the powers that be. We have very little influence with that.
Okay. Madeline, welcome to the show. Can you hear me, Madeline? Madeline. She must not be able to hear me. I can see her, but she must hear your speaker. Listen, Madeline. Madeline, call in. I can't hear you. Okay. Well, at any rate, she got up. So, ladies, what do you think, Margot?
Well, first of all, I really, really think that it should be a round table, people sitting at their tables in their living room, instead of, just adding in addition to what they do on a normal day-to-day basis.
Okay.
They should have open discussions about what's going on in their community. Those elected officials should be something that should be talked about as a family.
Okay.
And I think it also should be something that is just to know, do your children know? Do your neighbors know? Do your family members know? In the event that something happens, for resources, where do they go? Okay. So I think that's upon us to do. When I was a kid coming up, my mother was a precinct captain, so we always had the discussion. We had the literature. We had the people. Okay. So we were always like, we had some rough times in the projects, but however, the unity of the family in those projects kept us abreast of who was taking care of us.
Okay.
Who were unable to take care of ourselves.
And back then, those days, didn't the politicians, the local politicians, didn't they bring food on the holidays or before the holidays? They came and when it's election time, they would come and pick up the seniors and take them to the polls. That stuff doesn't happen anymore. Nobody worries about how the seniors are going to get to the polls. Well, nobody worries about who's educating the young people on why it's important for them to vote. I had two 18-year-olds yesterday that voted for the first time. And those young men were so excited. I'm telling you, they were like, what do I have to do? I registered, so what do I have to do? We had to walk them through it. I just saw the smile on their faces. They just knew they had some power and they came to exercise that power. I was like, oh, I love that. Then I had some middle-aged folks that came in with their fathers and their mothers. One man came and brought his mother and helped her vote. Then he came back an hour later with his father and helped them vote. I said, you go, boy. He said, I'm going to make sure they get to do what they need to do because they said they want to vote. I was like, see, we all need to do that. We all need to do that. Make sure people get to the polls, especially those in our families.
Well, I think if we could redo or re-enhance the block clubs from block to block, that used to be something that would inspire the people that were on the block, so that at least you got a chance to know who they are. Yeah. Majority of the people that's on my block, unless I say hello, they don't speak. Oh. And it may not just be because they don't see. They may be going through some issues.
Okay.
And as a Christian person in my church, we were taught that we smile and we say good morning and hello to everybody.
Right.
Even if they don't speak back.
Exactly. I was taught that too, Margot.
And then I was a girl, and I was in the Brownies, so we had to do a lot of extra. We had to do a lot of extra stuff in the community.
Okay.
To help the seniors, help the blind, help the people that needed help.
Yeah.
So we were brought up like that. Well,
why didn't our kids pick that up?
Why didn't our what?
Why didn't our children pick up the same kind of attributes that we had for seniors, that we had for our elders? Why didn't they pick that up? Well, I mean, I tried to.
Well, that was something. Well, that was something that was taught in our family, and it still goes on today. So that is a must.
It was taught in my family too.
Right, that's something that was taught. It isn't picked up. You know, that's one of the big problems with a lot of the families in America. They're not, and I think the fact that they had the virtual schooling has shown how uninvolved these parents really are in the day-to-day lives of their children. They have a commercial that is amazing. That they have this woman saying, "Oh, what I have to do is teach myself the assignment. Then I have to go and teach it to the kids." This is a quote. This is her house. That's because this is not the way I talk. She says, "I have to teach myself, then I have to go teach my child the assignment." And I'm thinking, what? And that right there, she's upset about. She said she's tired of doing that, you know. And I'm thinking, don't you help your child with their homework anyway?
Evidently, she doesn't, or maybe she doesn't do it often.
And so when you see a child who is not courteous, who is not respectful, I know people normally say something to the child, but you really need to be looking at their parents. Because one thing that I say that a really good friend of mine taught me about 30, 40 years ago, you know, we were talking about someone being really out of pocket. Mm-hmm. And she would say that's a direct reflection of his or her mother.
Wow.
Because had their mother raised them better, they would do better, you know. And that we go back to that now. Whatever these children don't have is because no one has taught them. They don't come here knowing to be courteous, knowing to be respectful, knowing where resources are. No, they have to be taught that. They even have to be taught how to trust.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you see them and they're not doing it, it's on the parents' part, whomever the parents may be.
Well, Madeline, what say you about this situation? You're a teacher. What's been some of your experience with these young folks and why their behavior is so on the other side? It's like the other extreme of how we were raised. You know, I would never have said some of the things in my grandmother's presence that has been said to me.
Yeah.
What? I can't hear you, Madeline. Turn your sound up. Can't hear you.
Okay. Let me do this.
Okay. This is Madeline Sanders, and I've been knowing Madeline for quite a few years. Madeline has worked with a few politicians. I think you ladies both know Madeline Sanders, don't you?
I've met her, yes.
Okay. What about you, Sandra? Have you met her?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody knows everybody. So Madeline, let's hear you say something, see if I got your sound.
Hold on 1 second. I know I need to turn it up at the speaker. Hold on.
Okay, well, we'll go on and then you join us, okay?
Just give me a second.
Sure.
And I wouldn't put it out on all kids or say it's so bad, because North Carolina, I believe it is, has the youngest congressman in the nation. Oh. He's 25 years old.
Whoa. Okay.
He's 25. And I mean, I was really impressed with the fact that he was young and very young, and undoubtedly he had been out there even younger, where people have learned to respect him for his decision-making process. And I just think that's great. So I don't believe necessarily saying that they're a problem. I mean, it is what it is. It's supposed to be. But when you're talking about introducing them into politics, like Margot said, that's a family discussion.
Right.
Because
right,
they
right.
live in the community too. And the last thing you want them to do is be disenfranchised when it comes to their community. Therefore, they're disenfranchised to the voting process, whomever it is.
Right.
Doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat, they don't want to participate.
Welcome to the show, Livette. Sorry for the interruption. Just wanted her to know that I see her. Are you on board? Can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Madeline. It's very low though. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can turn the speaker up a little bit more because I just realized I had turned it all the way down.
Oh, okay. Can you all hear her?
Can they hear? Can the other two ladies hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, they can hear you. Okay.
Okay,
Livette,
cool.
are you there? Okay, go ahead, Madeline. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just want to acknowledge folks.
Okay. Yeah, what I could say in connection with, well, a couple of things I heard when I first came on, and then the about people voting, and it was interesting, Wanda, to hear what you were saying with regard to the two young men. It was
yes,
they
were
voting
so
for the first
now.
time, and they were so excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I've been saying to it, I have some millennials in my family.
Okay.
And I was telling them because we were going back and forth about why they should vote.
Okay.
Okay. And I said to them, I know what the problem is, because they were saying, well, we never get anything. These people, we vote them and they win the election and we don't hear from them until the next election. Okay. For Black folks, that's typically what happens. Okay. Mm-hmm. I said, we need to take a page from the way other races do it.
Yeah.
And I know this to be a fact, and that is no matter what level of government we're talking about, whether it's at the federal level, state, or local.
Yeah.
Politicians, I said, keep in mind, they work for us, not the reverse. We have to require them to have town hall meetings. They have to report back to their constituents, whether it's biannually or quarterly, or whatever the schedule might be. And if you have to call that politicians in office, let's say a Danny Davis, for example, and I have not done this. Bobby Rush actually is my representative at the federal level. I've never called his office about it. Where are you having your town hall meetings? And I had no reason for not doing it. It's just that I didn't need him for anything because I know how to get my own resources. But if you want certain legislation proposed in your district, you have to call that politician's office and say, we need a meeting, a town hall meeting, date and time, so that we can report to you, Mr. Congressman Rush or Davis or whatever your name is, and tell that person, we need to have a town hall meeting so that we, the constituents, can tell you what legislation we need you to sponsor.
Yeah.
And then they have to come back to the constituents after another 2 months, another quarterly period, and report back on what they're doing at their level. So that's how we hold them accountable. Because there's no.
I think we need to teach everybody that, because I don't think a lot of us know that or do that.
Well, you know what? I'm prepared. I was a political science major, by the way. I know that that's the way it works, and that's what we have to do. And when you do it that way, then we're not giving these politicians a pass. And then we can keep a record of what legislation they're proposing, so that coming up to the next election time, we got a scorecard on them in terms of what they've been doing or not doing.
Okay.
So they can't just come to us and say, hey, vote for me. And then we can say, vote for you for what reason? Here's your scorecard. What legislation did you propose? What did you even get passed at the level that you're operating in? Okay. That's how you hold these politicians accountable. Now, and remember that, y'all, so that we just got out of one election. Okay. wherever you need, like all these communities, these black communities that look like bombed out war zones. Now, I'm getting ready to work on a project now to see if I can get what we call opportunity zone money, because there's an area that I would like to target with some other contractors to see about up revitalizing that community, because there is no way under the sun that anybody should go through a community and know that it is a black community. And why do we know it's a black community? Because you see boarded up properties, vacant lots, properties that don't show pride of ownership. You see liquor stores, you see too many churches. I mean, that's all the crap that you see. And you know, when you're going through that community, it's a black community.
Oh, hey,
there's no way.
You're right.
And we should not be able to distinguish a black community unless we see people walking through the community, or we go in the stores or other businesses and we see blacks working at those businesses because they either own them or they're working at them. That's the way we should know that we're in a black community, not because we go through a community and see a bunch of vacant lots and boarded up properties and liquor stores and too many churches. That should not be the appearance of our community. So we've got to work towards shoring up these communities. And I guarantee you one thing, guys, when we start to do that, you're going to see less excessive force exercised by these predominantly white police and Hispanics who come through our communities. Because when they come to a community that looks like a bombed out war zone, they expect to see crap going on. They expect to see crime. They expect to see open air drug markets, because they know where there's poverty, there's crime. And it's the bottom line. That's the way it works.
What say you? Somebody else who wants to respond to Madeline?
So I totally know what Madeline is saying. And it isn't, and again, what she's saying has been said for the last 20 years or so. And again, because I just got back to Chicago in July of 2019. I was very disappointed when I came back here after living in other states. And it is, like she said, you know immediately when you have crossed over from, and it's not that it's even much better as far as crime, but even appearance, you can know immediately when you've crossed over from Evergreen to Chicago, because the surface of the street changes, the lighting changes, and she's right. You start seeing and you can tell when a good neighborhood has gone bad, because when you drive back through it, like she said, you see the boarded up houses or the vacant lots, the trash, the people hanging out, the music blaring, and God knows from where.
Yeah.
And see, that kind is not having pride in where you live. Right. That is something I think they've been trying to address and get some kind of success. And I'm serious, maybe 25, 30 years, because, I heard Margot mention about the project a little while ago, growing up in there. Not everyone in the project was what you would call neighborhood or neighbor friendly. There was money that CHA and the HUD had put out when they decided to and agreed to let them tear down these projects because of the adverse psychological and impact that it was having on the residents. And then when they put them in a community, they failed to introduce them properly to those homeowners who were there, because again, they were not vested in the projects. Because many of the projects had all kinds of rules, but it was nothing but concrete and cedar brick everywhere. So you didn't have to worry about some of the things you deal with when you live in a residential community. But instead of things getting better as time has gone on, and it isn't because the people didn't try and didn't want to and didn't enjoy living better. You got to remember, the Black community, just like now with the pandemic, we have one of the highest unemployment rates. They were some of the first ones to get fired and lose their jobs because they have jobs and not careers. Right. Those who had careers are still working. Even if they cut their hours, they're still able to pay their bills to some degree, The next thing, it was the drugs. the drug infestations that we dealt with in the 90s, it really devastated the Black community, and it continues. They have a person now he was speaking for one of these candidates, and he was walking through the neighborhood, and he said his first experience with domestic terrorism was when his mother's boyfriend, who was a heroin addict, was in his mother's house, and this man looked like about late 40s, early 50s. He was in his house, and the kind of trauma that they had to go through then. That leaves another long-term adverse impact on the Black community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because
and so the politicians, I mean, I can remember, and I'm going to date myself, I can remember when Inglewood and Roseland and part of the West Side, Garfield area, probably, I got to remember it put up again. I remember, and the East Side of Chicago voted in Harold Washington.
Yeah.
And that was done through, again, Black businesses and the Black churches.
Yeah.
And one of the first things that happened after Harold Washington was elected and before he met his untimely death, the first thing the Chicago machine went out to do was make sure that would never happen again, and did it all out of thought on Inglewood. Because I remember when Halsted was closed off, like downtown Chicago, once upon a time, they had exclusive stores there and had been there for at least 20 years. You know, I had an in-law who lived right off of 67th in Halsted. She had one of those big Victorian houses there, wraparound. She had moved to Chicago in 1929, and they had wound up being able to purchase that house because they owned the funeral home on the west side of Anna J. Thompson's funeral home.
Okay.
And again, once we were able to come together and to actually do something better for ourselves, we were systemically penalized. And again, our youth and they're still trying to rebound from that.
Yeah.
Because again, a lot of other negative influences came to play. Again, one of the things I think they didn't plan on was the fact that the younger folks, unlike the traditionals, some of the boomers, those Generation X's, and definitely the millennials, they're into having friends of all races. Yeah. And they're into marrying at all races. So what happened when one was hanging around, when it was infesting our community, if they had white friends and they came over to their community or they got together, that same drug that was being introduced here was being introduced to them.
Yeah.
And we haven't rebounded from that yet. But one of the reasons we haven't.
That's great. I mean, that's insight. You know, things have changed so drastically from what it was to what it is today. I'm just interested. Levette, tell me what your experience has been like on the west side of Chicago.
Now, what's your question?
What's your experience been like with the west side of Chicago, on the west side of Chicago, with, you know, just the historical way we were raised, the way we were taught to respect our elders, the way, just what influences today do we have on these young people and their understanding of why it's so important to vote? You know, what it just seems like they don't value voting like we do now, and like we did then. I was excited to be able to vote. I thought my voice meant I had a say in what went on, even if it didn't. That's what I thought. So I went to vote. I tried to follow up on and see who the elected, who the candidates were, so I would be able to make an educated vote. But you know, I don't know. Today it just seems like some young people just don't see the validity in voting.
You know, I I think when we observe where we are in this world, and the biggest problem with the Black race is that when the world experienced a pandemic, we experience a multiple pandemic. Everything that happens to the Black community happens triple time.
Yeah.
And so I mean in that sense, just living on the West Side and observing the pandemic.
Right.
When it struck us first, the world knew it was the Black community that was falling. We were falling like soldiers.
Yeah.
And it was in the news. This virus is hitting the Black community more than anybody. I mean, my mom, she's 80, and she's a church going woman, and she knows a lot of pastors, and every weekend she was like, "Oh, Pastor so and so died. Pastor so and so died." So it was wreaking havoc through the Black community.
Yeah.
But listen, then all of a sudden the tables turned, because I followed this virus. Then all of a sudden it started showing up in other zip codes.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends said to me early on, he was like, "I just don't hear what zip code this thing is in." And so I kept searching, and then all of a sudden the zip codes started to come in. Then the zip codes the zip codes were white. Then all of a sudden I hear there's funding available for them. It's just like the drugs, the opioids. Our people have been suffering with drugs forever and ever. Soon as the white community gets public with it, then the resources go to them. So whenever there is some kind of strain on the Black community, it seems as though instead of relief, they put their foot on our necks even harder. So it is up to us, just like the sister was saying earlier about what she's going to do, that's what you have to do. You can't sit back and start talking about what's not being done. If you don't put some effort into what you want to do, because if Sojourner Truth had figured out what somebody else wanted to do, this stuff wouldn't have never got done. We wouldn't be here.
You're right.
And so we've got to listen. When I wake up every day, I promise you all, I've not looked at any news, any politics, no radio. If something happened that this morning I woke up at 4:30, and I refused. I refused to listen to any of it because I saw it consume the people that were around me. They couldn't breathe. They're still on edge, because I see my mom and how she's responding. So I did know. She's my roving reporter. So she did, let me know. I walked past. I said, "What's the electoral numbers, Mom?" And so I was informed. But I had to continue to do what it is to make me a better person. And so no matter what this election does, how it turns out, in the Bible it says every man flee his own soul to his own country. So you're responsible for your own footprint. And if you go to bed at night sad about circumstance, then you better look at your own circumstance and see how you can make it better, because if you're not making your circumstance better, you're not contributing to anything that's going to make life better for you or anybody else.
What say you,
yes, we have historically, and I just want to say, historically, the Black community is a very special group of people, because some people don't even like to be called Black. Some of us call ourselves African American. Some call us this and that and that and this. And that is basically one of our biggest problems, is that we have not unified as a unit. And we are fractured in our plight, and that's why the Republicans are so tight, because they're one unit. They're one unit. If you ask the Black community what they are various things. They're not a cohesive unit. And so therefore we don't move as an elephant herd. We move as a
I heard that statement on the show. When I've heard
I can't hear. I don't know I can't hear anything.
Somebody's got a mic open and the dog barking and some other stuff going on. Put the mic until you get ready to speak. But I was commenting on what you said about us being not connected. You know, we're fragile. We're not functioning as a holistic community. I heard that on 9 from your guest who was president and said very clearly that, you know, we have all these different, this United States is a conglomeration of a multitude of races, and that, you know, but we're all here in this together.
But Wanda, but we're the only race that can't operate as a unit. Yes, we're here. But guess what? When Mexicans speak, they're not trying to be diverse. They're not trying to say, hey, excuse me, wait a minute, let the Black people in. Let us see what they think. Let us see what their opinions are. But just like the Black women, when we march, the first thing white women will, let us be our march. Come march with us. And then all of a sudden, our voice is scattered in the wind, because now something else is taking over. So what I'm saying is not that we have to be separate, but we have to identify our own voice so that we have a voice that is powerful. But everything that we take on, it becomes morphed into other people's stuff. That's why the Latinos, they never told anybody who they were voting for. You know what they did? They made demands. So that when this is all over, it didn't matter who won. They asked for what they wanted to up front. Well, here in Illinois, there was no money put on the street, because guess what? It was all blue. Why waste money? Why waste advertisement? Why waste anything to encourage anybody to vote? Because guess what? Everybody said across the whole nation, oh, Biden's got the Black vote in his pocket. And so why would he have to offer us anything?
Comment on that.
That's right.
And so anyway.
Okay, Naima,
anyway.
Comment.
I think that there's a perception by other people that Black people stick together and we all think the same way. And so if you listen to other ethnic groups, you know, be they white, Hispanic, Asian, the perception is all Black people think alike. And that's why the perception was all Black people are going to vote Democrat. Well, in fact, there were a lot of people who are voting Republican who happen to be Black people.
Yeah.
And then you have different ethnicities of Black people. You have the Black people who are descendants from people who've been here for several generations. And then you have the Black people who just recently got here as immigrants from various nations. So even the Black community is not monolithic. You have Jamaicans, you have Haitians, you have Nigerians, you got Ghanaians, and then you got people from other places where they could go either way on the census, you know, Egyptians and everything else. They might be dark, they might be light. So to say that we aren't unified, I don't think that's quite accurate, because every group has its diversity, and we just perceive that other people are more organized, and probably because we tend to focus more on acceptance by other people. And that's because of the psychological barrier that we have, thinking that other people's opinion matters. Like you said, you know, the Hispanic community, they said, these are our demands. You need to support immigration. You need to support the workers' right to a living wage. I mean, all the issues that they know as a community and as individuals they have to deal with, they put it on the table. Right. So because our issues are diverse, we're not always clear on what is best for the group. We know that there is.
Can I just interject? Can I interject just quickly? I agree with you and my point you made, because when you said when Hispanics demand or request, it is for them. And so, yes, we are a diaspora of a varied group. But when I speak of us, Blacks, I'm talking about those that have experienced the Black experience in America and have gone through developing ourselves as a unit of people with demands and commands. So in the last 50 years, the Curta Commission report that was revised showed that we're still at the bottom of the totem pole. So Hispanic income is at $56,000, their median income, and ours is way below there. So there's a problem not with who we are as a diverse group of people, but our situation is separate than anybody's, because statistically speaking, and I'm just really speaking of Black Americans, is the fact that we are still on the bottom of the totem pole in every stat. So everyone that speaks their voice, they speak their voice for their unit. I'm not trying to say that we don't need to be inclusive, but because we're at the bottom of the totem pole in every stat, my concern is how to work as a unit so that we're not always at the end of the train.
Anthony, what say you?
My thing is this. It puzzles me that the Hispanics can go to Springfield and ask for $100 million, walk away with 98 million. Then they go out to Joliet where the governor give them 300 million. And then Trump give them another 300 million. And we continue to get the raw end of the deal when I have to raise the issue with the Black Caucus in Congress. Why is it that EB5 visa, they get all these breaks, and let's go for all these different immigrants. Well, that's the law.
That's the law?
Yeah, EB5.
What exactly is EB5?
Hold on a second.
Well, one point I wanted to make about the whole immigrant thing, and a lot of times we're not looking at the fact that immigrants who are Black, who are from other places, may have a different political viewpoint than the native-born Black people, because they come here like most immigrants. They come here looking to be entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Come here with wealth a lot of times.
Yes.
So they come, they're buying property, they're buying income property. So their point of view and
totally different.
What their agenda is, and even their issues is going to be different than the native-born African American who's been here for generations, whose families were enslaved and who went through all of the Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, and all of that,
yes,
and are still struggling economically, as opposed to the immigrant who comes here and after 2 generations, they got a couple of buildings that they're renting, and they got some businesses that they're running. They're looking at us like, how come you can't get it together? You've been here and you still broke and poor and struggling, and we just got here and we already got thriving businesses.
Exactly.
Well, they can do that Congress created the EB-5 program in 1990 to stimulate the U.S. economy through the job creation and capital investment by foreign investors. In 1992, Congress created the Immigrant Investors Program, also known as the Regional Center Program. Now, as we talked about this some time back,
okay,
we created the Marshall Plan to redevelop Europe after we bombed the hell out of them.
Okay.
At the cost of Hitler. We created the Marshall Plan to redevelop Japan. And we're saying we need a Marshall Plan in our community. Because if we can help everybody else and they're using our tax dollars, then we need a Black Marshall Plan.
Okay, well, Sandra, is that you back?
Yes, I'm back. Some kind of way we got cut off. Margot and I.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
And so you notice that the fair tax did not pass, folks.
Huh? What you say?
Fair tax did not pass.
Okay. It didn't pass?
It didn't pass.
Surprised.
I'm surprised. I mean, because everybody that I had to help, that was the first question they had. Where's the fair tax? You know, I had to go over there and help them see it on the
well, you gotta understand. Ken Griffin, he spent $46 million of his own money to get it defeated.
Wow.
And then other billionaires came in to help get it defeated. So that leaves us back to square one when we was part of the governor's task force on property tax relief. We looked at this whole issue of the fair taxes being part of phase one, whether it passed or didn't pass. We got to go to phase two, which means the governor put it out in his state address. We got to reform, consolidate, and liquidate the 7,000 units of government. So Representative Mary Flowers, who task force I worked on with her committee, we want to consolidate the 856 school districts down to 6 and use 299 as a model. Because if Chicago can have 400,000 students, why can't we have 5 other districts to duplicate that would save us billions of dollars?
Oh boy, man.
The second thing, we want to get the schools off the property tax system. The property taxes is costing us $30 billion a year. The schools is costing us $18 billion. And if you deduct that 856 from the 7,000, that leaves 6,144 units of government left at a price tag of $12 billion. Okay. And eventually, we want to cut that down to 1,900 units of government because some of this stuff we don't need, and some of it can go up under the jurisdiction of the various counties. We have 102 counties. We want to cut that down to 50. We don't need all this stuff. It's choking us.
Okay.
With all due respect, that's a lot of updated information. Has anybody else pulled up any updates on the election right now?
Well, Joe Biden is closer. Let me see how many electoral votes he has to go.
He needs 17,
right? He needs
17.
17?
Yeah, 17.
Okay.
No, he needs 6. He only needs 6. He's at 264.
He picked up Arizona?
If you don't have the latest information, don't call out a number. He has 264.
People, we're not pundits and we're not held to any high degree. So I just think, let's just continue to converse and get the information out.
Yeah, because the last time I checked, Arizona was still in play.
Excuse me.
And Donald Trump is showing Michigan.
Hello?
Yeah.
Arizona is blue. Hello?
Yeah.
Arizona
All right.
is blue,
Yes.
and Nevada is what we're waiting for.
That's 6.
And they're leading. He's leading. The Democrats are leading in Nevada.
They said we won't know. We won't have that full count until tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay, now
We're on this.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, and you all kind of responded. If you go on CNN, they actually are keeping real time tracking of how the tallies are coming in
Good.
and what states are doing.
Yeah, and
I think
and that's what
now we already know, guys. Donald Trump, he's talking about, for example, filing a lawsuit in Wisconsin to require a recount. I think Biden got won Wisconsin by 21. I believe it was 21,000 votes, and it was Kenosha, the city where all that what is it, Jonathan Blake, the young fellow who just got shot in the back.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and that just happened. And see, Trump did himself in by going there and meeting with the police.
Talk.
He met with the police.
Yep.
He didn't meet with the family
Nope.
of Blake. None of that. He went in there with his usual
Law and order.
Yeah. So that behavior did him in.
Well,
totally.
And I said, so much the better. Good enough for it.
Yes.
Okay. Because that law and order stuff is not.
Do you think a lot of the violence with the police and the killings and the Black Lives Matter and all that, do you think that all of that served to go in Joe Biden's favor? Because we had a whole lot of early votes. So is that where the energy of that was coming from, the anger, and that translated to against Trump?
I'm going to say so, because you got to understand, the families of these folks were telling us, if you're going to be out here demonstrating, go vote. Go vote.
Yeah.
Okay. Like President Obama said, when they boo, he said, don't boo, vote. Okay. So anybody can boo, but go vote.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I want to share something with you all. With all of what's going on, and one thing I'm going to tell you all about, I hope that all of us are clear about the mission of Black Lives Matter. See, a lot of people have jumped on some of what they're doing as far as, wrapping themselves around the police killings and all that, and how, we need to respond to that. That's fine. But when you go on their website and look at their mission, have any of you done that?
I have.
Yeah, I have, because I've heard challenges to that group from several people. So I did go on the website.
I've never worn anything BLM, spoken anything BLM, because I knew them from the inception. I knew who they were funded by, and I knew what their mission was. And I knew that was another, just as I said, that was another movement that usurped the Black community's movement. And so their message took over our message and our plight. And so that's what happens in the Black community, is whenever there's progress, this is historical. Whenever there's progress, then there are the riffraff that are intentionally placed in your community to halt your progress, your movement, your voice. And so we almost have to do an underground kind of communication with each other. First of all, decide what is our main voice. What is it that we seek to make better for ourselves? And then make sure that it is us at the table and no others talking about how they want to help us in our plight. That's what happened in Chicago and other major cities. You had other undercover groups making it a bad name for our plight. And they provided the bricks to go through the window. They provided the spray painting. They did that. And it was a lot of white young people that came and intentionally jacked up the movement that was organic. And so we have to understand that that is such a problem, that whenever we're moving forward, what do? All of a sudden, a train opens up and it has AK-47 just for the picking.
Okay.
And so these things are intentional to happen to us, and we've got to be able to have a stronger voice to knock that aside.
Okay.
Okay, I want to say something in connection with what you just said, Levette. And I can appreciate what you're saying, but here's the thing, and I think about this a lot, because I've been on this planet for a long time, first of all. I was around in the 1960s when the whole civil rights movement was moving, when Martin Luther King was leading the country, the country, when I say the country, as far as the nationalization of what we were trying to do, i.e., first of all, deal with public accommodations. And then when he got assassinated, as a matter of fact, when he got assassinated, and I've said this to various individuals, I'll put it that way. King got assassinated because he was getting ready to move on the economic and education policy direction for Blacks in this country. That's why he got wiped out. It was fine when he was dealing with public accommodations. White folks were okay with that. But when you talk about economic strength and educational strength, that's a whole nother ballgame. That was getting ready to power Black folks at a level that definitely was going to put some real fear in among whites about what was going on with us Black folks. Now, that said, I would say to you, because I was involved in, well, the major protest that I was involved in fact, was with the apartheid system, which really mirrors what's going on in the United States. When I was at Northwestern University, we had a major protest, which was unheard of in 1972. We shut down the campus. The administration scared the hell out of them, because what we were demanding was that they divest the university of their stock holdings in South Africa.
Whoa.
And they did that. They did that. And it was those kinds of movements. So we had first adults that were engaged in, and it was all Blacks at that time, engaged in uprising. We remember talking about Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, CORE, SNCC, I mean, all those organizations, Black folks, all day, every day. The whole Black Power movement, when James Brown came out with the song, I'm Black and I'm Proud. I used to walk around raising my fist, power to the people and all that kind of stuff. I'd walk across the street in front of a car, power to the people.
Look, I had the Big Natural and we were doing all
the Big
that.
Natural, the whole thing, okay? And I think that, and what happened was when King got assassinated,
yeah,
everybody got quiet.
I remember the armed guards up and down 63rd Street. People breaking in and out the stores and carrying big old TVs and all kind of stuff. I remember those riots.
Yeah, I went to the day he got assassinated. I was living on the south side. I went over to the west side and I was watching all that go down. I didn't go in any stores and steal anything.
No, I didn't either, but I saw other people.
I saw it happening, yes. But I think a lot of Black folks, here's what a friend of mine, I've talked about this with some friends. Some people are saying, even though there was protests, because I talked about the protests that went on campuses with regard to the apartheid policies in South Africa. A lot of Blacks, when King got assassinated, a lot of Black folks got scared.
You think
they said, oh no, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this. I value my life. I want to live.
Yeah.
And I see Naima shaking her head. Yeah, she knows a lot of Black folks got scared.
It was like, it was fun. It almost like a game marching
Yeah.
through the streets and everything. But then when people started getting assassinated,
Yeah,
and
right.
gets assassinated, that was emotionally traumatizing for a lot of
Exactly.
people. A lot of
Exactly.
people went underground, and you didn't hear from them anymore because
Exactly.
it was real. Now someone
Exactly.
died.
Right.
Those
And do
people
you
died.
know?
So
Yes.
then when you start thinking about, are you really ready to die? It's one thing to say, but it's another thing to see someone
Right.
killed.
Right.
And so that did have a shattering effect on a lot of people.
It absolutely did. And then, as a matter of fact, a lot of blacks went underground and went down, but then the Black Panther movement was started. I was living in Oakland, California when Hugh Newton and Bobby said we knew each other. And in fact, they asked me about joining the Black, Huey did. We had a conversation about me joining the Black Panther movement. And I told him I would think about it. And I was serious. But then when they showed up in Sacramento with the guns and the berets, I said, that's a bit too much for me.
But I'm thinking about it though, they need to get people out of that fear mode, because if we're being made afraid because someone used weaponry at us, then we had to undo that fear and
exactly.
say, we're fighting back. We're not afraid of you. And that changed the dynamics of the whole movement. Because now you have people who were using the law that was available at the time. You had the right to carry arms and carry it openly, which they did.
Exactly.
But it frightened the police, who then moved on them and organized all the assassinations that went on and I know people in other states that were part of the Black Panther Party that ended up some kind of way, trumped up charges and went to jail for life.
Exactly.
And so this was an organized effort by the federal government, the local governments, to come down on the Black Panthers.
And we know what J. Edgar Hoover did to the Panthers. I mean, he said that was the worst, the most terrorist organization in the country. That's what Hoover said about the Black Panthers. And that's when along came COINTELPRO. Remember the COINTELPRO?
Oh, it was around even before him. COINTELPRO was around, I believe, even when Paul Robeson, when he was.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
A long time where you had an organized effort to disrupt Black organizations, to target Black leadership.
Exactly.
And the only way those things become successful is that a certain percentage of Black people are able to buy into the idea.
Right.
Exactly.
Black people that were afraid of Black Panthers, thought it was a gang, spoke against, even though they had the free breakfast program.
Yeah, they had a lot of stuff going on for the community.
Yeah, they were helping the community. But even that was subverted. Now you look at what happened with the Black Panthers, and then you look at today, say hip hop music. Now, when that first started out, that was like revolutionary poetry.
Exactly.
And then some kind of it got subverted to gangster rap, and then the whole depiction of women in the most degrading manner. So we see our intellectuals and our creative artists being subverted so that they can't be empowering to our political movement.
Exactly.
And that's done on purpose.
Yes.
With money and people with
lots of it.
With lots of it and a political interest, so that our strongest fighters for freedom, our young people, are subverted into self-destructive behavior.
Right.
Exactly.
And the only way that happens is that the elders stop talking to the young people.
That's right.
And let somebody else mislead them, just like what happened with the Black Lives Matter movement, like you're saying. This was a movement that was organized. I mean, we got a state's attorney elected because people were so angry at the Laquan McDonald killing.
Exactly.
Organized that boycott, and those businesses on North Michigan Avenue, they were like, oh, we got to get that woman out because we losing money. And so that was, that was a powerful statement. But then now we have organized protests, and some kind of way it ends up looting and tearing up the stores in our neighborhoods.
Listen, like that said, it wasn't us.
But you have professional. But Naima, they have professional agitators in that crowd. I mean, and see, that's another thing that's going on. Everybody, I don't like sometimes hearing the negative stuff about what they're doing or blacks don't do, because I hate to tell you guys, I support Black Lives Matter, but I also support other movements.
A lot of people support.
Wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. I'll let you talk. I also support other smaller grassroots initiatives that will help the Black community. We are so fragmented, And we have so many, and for lack of a better word, deficiencies that one organization cannot address all of our issues and concerns. And I agree totally with Naima that, again, at times we have to show that we're not afraid. Yes, some of those folks, because again, you kill the leader of anyone, the whole group is gonna stop. Sometimes they gotta go back and regroup and come up with a strategy or identify a new leader because you just killed our leader. That doesn't mean that they didn't know that they gave up. And when it comes to the young people, you got to learn to talk to the young people instead of talking at them or about them. There's a terrible breakdown when it comes to traditionalists and early boomers talking to the younger group because you're more punitive and you come off across combative instead of informative. You talk about all of their downfalls or their irregularities, but you never praise them for the fact that they're even interested, for the fact that they're even willing to walk and march and protest. You just have to keep the conversation going in order to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can I interject for a second, Wanda?
Sure.
As I stated earlier too, you and I agree. You have to be one-on-one. You've got to have no barriers. And me going towards 70, I'm able to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with 40 young artists last year.
Okay.
This year has been sort of a shutdown, but I hired 40 artists, half seniors, half millennials.
Oh.
And our message was about a plan. And the plan, PLAN, represents peace, love, art, and nature. And so we specifically wanted to combine these two groups so that one can mentor the other and the other can mentor the other, because some of the young people taught us and we taught them, and there were no barriers. And when I say that I never followed Black Lives Matter, is not that their perception was not great, because it was. And what they did was historical and phenomenal. But once you get to the root of something and you realize that you're caught up in something that you thought was, and then you dig a little deeper and you realize, hey, wait a minute, this is not what is going to lead me. And so when I look at the fact that everything is about what BLM is doing, then is that our mission? And so I think that, you know, all of the movements or whatever is going on, where do we fit? And if we're interested in having that conversation that says, look, in my neighborhood on the West Side, what I see is devastating. It's like a third world country. It's worse than some third world countries. Yeah. I see no mental health help. I see no help for the homeless. I see no grocery stores open. And I know that we had our hands in it. But when you are knee deep in a systemic, perpetrated production,
come on,
then how do you fight that? How do you fight that? Because when you know that they have allocated millions of dollars, as Anthony has said, and when you as a Black organization get ready to apply for it, they say, wait a minute, Miss or Mr. Seal, let me show you how to jump through all of these hoops. When they got the money to distribute it to us, they just got a blank check.
Yeah.
And so the systemic economic pandemic that we're going through is also intentional. Yeah. And so what we do we do have so much passion and compassion about our situation and how to make it work. But look at the elephant on our necks.
Yes.
And so the question then is, Mayor Lightfoot, Governor Pritzker, all of the other grants, and it's like, how do you write into the policy that the reparations that's due us to get the monkey off our back should be just deposited into our banks? And all of this going through this hoop, that hoop. Now, housing, you've got very intelligent people that I know, very well thought of, can't find housing because people are putting all of these stipulations because they know that Inglewood is being gentrified, East Garfield Park is being gentrified, and because these people, it's nothing to come and pay $2,000 for a one-bedroom.
Right.
And so now they take all of the housing stock, and all of that is intentional because there's no way that these aldermen, who are sort of like kings and queens of our community, because in Africa, they would be little countries. Okay. And so these people, they take our plight and they do nothing. And so we continue to talk about it, but I would really like to have a solution table where the only thing we're talking about is the solution.
What say you?
Because it seems like the problem is surmountable.
It is.
And the conversation has to be, what is the solution? Because every day I see grants being dollars of money. It's just like falling from the sky. And every day I find, and I'm like, who is it going to? Because there are 200 organizations in our community that are predominantly white. And so if all of these organizations are getting this funding to stop crime, and then crime is still at the top of the helm, what are they doing with the money? They're not, anyway, I'm sorry.
Okay, Anthony.
I have Wanda, can I say two things in connection with what Lavette said?
Sure.
Lavette, I was going to say this to you. Two things. One thing about housing, in downtown Chicago, for example, now there is an overabundance of property because the building that has gone on downtown has been infinitum. Now what has happened is that because of this pandemic, you got tons and tons of properties downtown that are unoccupied, and the owners who developed those high rises, they don't have any bodies to put in them.
Yeah, but
so now what is happening is, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, and now people out here who need housing, actually, if it were me in a community, I would be going to the alderman and talking to them because, see, remember, all politics is local. I would be going to the alderman of the area where I live and starting a conversation to deal with the housing issue because the timing is right. All that property downtown, a lot of it is unoccupied. I just heard this report about a week and a half ago. And so there are a lot of developers of those buildings, they are desperate to have people, and they're not even trying to sell the things now. They were supposed to be condo, a lot of those were supposed to be condo buildings. They can't even sell them now. And so that's
I can imagine that one.
Okay, and that's what's happening. Now, the other thing I was going to say in connection with what Lavette was saying was that as far as the, I'm looking at this about the crime piece. I just wrote 21 proposed reforms, which were submitted to, I submitted them to, at least I had a new colleague, someone I just met, Renee Ferguson, who has direct contact to the hierarchy in Biden's campaign. These are all major criminal justice reforms that are designed to impact law enforcement, both at the federal and in the state level specifically. Of course, I'm going to focus on Illinois because I live in this state. And I can tell you there are things that are happening by way of Biden, by way of the Illinois Black Caucus, to reform this criminal justice system, because we know these killings of unarmed Black men and young men is way, 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 way over the top. And it's not something that just started, guys. We know this stuff has been going on for centuries, decades, all of that stuff, because we know why law enforcement was created in the first place.
Okay.
Now, I'm sorry. Now, what is your name, ma'am?
Oh, it's Madeline. I'm
Madeline. I think that what you're saying is a solution. And so that's something that I would support in its own section, its own category, where there is a conference or forum around just that, where it gets the attention that it needs. And so when you do whatever your next step is, I would like to see or know how you are moving forward with something like that.
Okay.
Because that is the solution.
Okay.
And I would like to see where that goes.
Okay.
I have a question, and this comes up all the time when we talk about justice and the criminal justice system overly policing and overly incarcerating Black people. Those who are in law enforcement are always saying things like, you all get mad at us when we arrest somebody and put them in jail, but then when this same person come and robs your house or shoots or kills your loved one, then you're upset because you're saying we're not trying hard enough to stop the crime in your neighborhood. So which do you want us to do? Either we're gonna ardently go after those who appear to be the criminal element and keep your community safe, or we're going to have a hands-off policy, and then you're going to be upset and saying we're not trying hard enough to protect you. So what do you say?
Is that what you're hearing, Naima? That's what you're hearing?
Can I answer that? Can I answer that? Some of Chicago's finest being my friends. Let me answer that for you. Okay. I called the police on a young man because he had very erratic behavior. I was concerned for his well-being. He was only about 15, 16. I saw him exit from someone's house, and it was as though they kicked him out. I know he didn't live there. So he came behind my house, and he was doing this kind of rap thing, movement, shooting with the gun in his hand. So he disturbed me, right? And so I called 911 for just someone to see if this young boy was okay. And he had a backpack on. Now, I could have gone out and said something, but I used to do that. Not today. And so finally, they asked, do you want a paramedic or do you want a police? I said, I'm thinking officer friendly, just send the cop by, just to see if the young boy's okay. Here comes the cop, right? And the way that they handled it was, somebody call the police on you. Not, are you all right, young man? Like they would if they saw a little white boy. Right. Are you all right, young man? What are you hanging out for? Where do you live? And it became antagonistic, right? And I'm watching this through my window. I'm livid because this is not what I expected. But I guess in today's day, in retrospect, I look back and realize I shouldn't have done that. So what does he do? He looks up at my house and he said, somebody called the cops on you. So if we had officer friendlies like I did when I was in high school and grammar school that really were concerned and not a setup. These people out here on the street are set up. When there's a gunshot, their ballistic machines all over. They're supposed to be on the scene immediately. Here's a gunshot. They don't come. So if we were in a situation where, yes, cops were the one to serve and protect, Yes. Now, let me tell you, I got my grandson with me. I stopped the police in my neighborhood and I said, excuse me, you see this young fellow right here? He's a musician. He carries his guitar. I'm telling you, if you see him, don't bother him. He's not the one. And so I'm saying that these cops are so rotten to the core that what you would expect for them to do, they do the opposite. Now, I have communicated with some cops that are trying to do some different things because we are working with 183 acres of park land, and we have met with the commander, met with the head over CAPS, and we have said to them, you got to walk with us. Now, we asked them to not wear their weapons. They said, no, look, we won't wear our uniforms, but we're not coming up in there without our peace. And so I'm saying that you've got to, and we're claiming that territory, because if you don't heal the core of your community, then it's going to implode. And just doing some things that might matter. And so we have such a job ahead of us, and considering the pandemic, and considering our economic status, our mental status, everything about what we're doing, we right now, speaking right together, we are warriors on the front line. And that's how I see myself, a warrior on the front line.
We got 2 minutes, ladies.
Okay, Lavette, I was going to tell you what back in 2013, a friend of mine said to me that a lot of these killings of unarmed Black men, he's told me, he said, this looks like the KKK. What I did was I went on their website. I looked at their mission. Part of their mission is that they say they want to make sure they're represented in law enforcement, politics, and education.
Whoa.
In law enforcement, what they said in one of their statements was that in every family, because they have a lot of families that join the KKK, they want one person to be a policeman and one person to be a lawyer. Wow. And they said that they will pay, if necessary, they will pay for the legal education of the person who goes to law school. Okay.
But you know, they do that for organized crime also. Like I say, but and I'm sorry, Madeline, I didn't mean to cut you off, because I'm going to get off because I wanted to say she had 2 minutes. You guys act like you guys have not been involved. I was a beat facilitator for Chicago, 17 years, and beat 824. And it's kind of sad to hear, because you kept calling cops. That's one of the most insulting things you can call a police officer, is a cop and a pig. But I think the biggest thing I can tell you that was the problem back then, and Ted O'Keefe and especially Terry Hillard, he did a lot of great good when he was trying to get the police department and the Chicago residents back together, or at least where they respected each other. What's happening now is a huge amount of disrespect. And I would have never called the police on a 15-year-old Black male or Hispanic, because I could have told you that was not going to go well. That was not going to go well at all. And unfortunately,
if he's still alive, is he still alive? Because when
I don't know. You know what? Hold on.
Not going to go well.
Hold on, listen. What I did, I would not take my eye off the situation.
Okay.
So they didn't get out of the car. I watched the whole situation, and I regret. You know, hey, listen. I'm the first one that said, listen, I do regret, but I watched. I would not just walk away. I made sure that no harm came to him. So, you know, it was a situation that I created, and I stayed with it. And as far as calling cops, they better be glad I don't call them anything worse. Because the disrespect that they have in my community, I'm just saying, you know, I'm old school. So when I say cops, I mean cops.
You have to be all in. If you're going to help your community,
listen, I'm not always politically correct, and excuse me, but the just like those guys, they, you know, and I'm just that's just how I am. Now maybe that's something I gotta think about, but they better be glad I don't call them worse.
Anthony.
Yes.
All right. Are you still with us?
Yes, y'all. You ladies are on target. Y'all are on target, boy.
Well, we gotta close, but
Let me.
Wanda, can we have after this, we could put together maybe a conference to deal with the whole law enforcement piece. I mean, these proposals, because you know, there's a lot of conversation going on about reforming the criminal justice system, and we know it desperately needs to be reformed.
Well, let's do that. Let's schedule another broadcast. We can do it in a couple of days. You guys want to do it in a couple of days, or you just want to wait for our Wednesday session?
You mean next Wednesday?
Yes, next Wednesday. Every Wednesday I'm doing 6 o'clock.
Okay. Well, by that time I would have gotten back to.
Can I end with this, please?
Yes.
I looked in the dictionary. It says cop, a police officer. So I don't know why that is so negative when it says cop, a police officer. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Next time.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.